A diplomatic clash has rocked the BRICS gathering in New Delhi. Inside the BRICS security gathering, Iran openly accused the United Arab Emirates of helping to facilitate attacks against the Islamic Republic, reigniting a bitter dispute that has exposed deep cracks inside the expanded alliance. The confrontation erupted during the 16th BRICS National Security Advisers meeting, chaired by India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, as Iranian officials directly accused Abu Dhabi of complicity in recent military actions against Tehran. At the center of the storm was Ghadir Nezamipour, Iran's Deputy Secretary for Defense Affairs at the Supreme National Security Council. He alleged that the United States and Israel had initiated the aggression and triggered the crisis in the Strait of Hormuz, and claimed that part of those attacks were carried out from bases located on the territory of the United Arab Emirates. It was a direct and explosive charge, accusing a fellow BRICS member of allowing its own soil to be used as a launchpad against Iran. Nezamipour went further, accusing the UAE of permitting its territory to be used for attacks on Iranian civilian infrastructure, including, he said, schools and hospitals. To drive the point home, the Iranian official reportedly displayed an image of students he said were killed in Minab during the opening stages of the war. The image sharpened the accusation and gave Tehran's message a powerful human dimension. He urged Abu Dhabi to respect the principles of good neighborliness and to choose what he called the path of peace, stability, and regional cooperation. But the United Arab Emirates has already rejected the broader accusation in categorical terms. Abu Dhabi has repeatedly and categorically denied Iran's allegations. In earlier BRICS discussions, UAE Minister of State Khalifa Shaheen al-Marar dismissed Tehran's accusations outright and asserted that the UAE reserves its full sovereign, diplomatic, legal, and military rights to respond to any threat or hostile act. Far from accepting blame, the Emirates pushed back hard, leaving two members of the same bloc openly at odds. And that is the real story here. The public spat highlights growing strains inside an expanded BRICS that now includes both Iran and the UAE, alongside Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. It was not the first such clash. A similar confrontation last month during the BRICS foreign ministers meeting reportedly stopped the bloc from issuing a full joint statement. For a group that wants to present itself as a unified voice of the global South, these divisions are a serious problem.
We have got a very special role to play in this world which appears to be in a turmoil, a world which appears to be changing, a world in which the instruments of conflict resolutions are probably getting blunted. What role we, as a grouping, can play is a matter that is important for us to ponder. India welcomes the MOU reached between the US and Iran. We have got cautious optimism and we hope that it will work. It will help energy security. Opening of the Strait of Hormuz is a very welcome development. It will remove supply chain bottlenecks and many of the shortages in the field of say, fertilizers and chemicals, etc., will be met with.
According to the MOU, Iranian assets should be defrozen by the United States, and Iran should have full access to its assets which have been frozen outside the country. And Iran is the only country who decides what to do with those assets. And there would be no any role for any other country or entity to have a say on how those assets should be used by Iran. I reject any claim about that there would be any role for any other country to have an influence on those decisions or on those processes. Of course, there are some technical arrangements which should be made by United States and by Qatar, because the assets have been frozen by United States, and at least some parts of those assets are in Qatar. Yes, Strait of Hormuz is completely open, of course, for commercial vessels, according to the memorandum of understanding, and it is without receiving any charges. After 60 days, it depends on the negotiations. It is one of the discussions which shall be made between two sides.
As the host, India tried to steer the focus back toward diplomacy. Speaking at the gathering, National Security Advisor Ajit Doval said the grouping had a special role to play in a world he described as in turmoil, a world where the usual tools of conflict resolution were, in his words, getting blunted. India, he said, welcomed the memorandum of understanding reached between the United States and Iran and approached it with what he called cautious optimism, expressing hope that it would hold. Doval was especially pointed about the economic stakes. The reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, he said, was a very welcome development, one that would help energy security and ease pressure on global trade. He argued it would remove supply chain bottlenecks and that shortages in areas like fertilizers and chemicals could now be eased. For India, a major importer that relies on that waterway, the calming of the strait was not an abstract diplomatic win, but a direct economic relief. Iran's side echoed that the strait was now open, but framed it firmly on Tehran's terms. An Iranian official stressed that the Strait of Hormuz was completely open for commercial vessels, in line with the memorandum of understanding, and, crucially, without any charges being imposed. It was a way of signaling that Iran was honoring the deal, while making clear that the passage of ships through the waterway remained tied to the agreement, not simply granted. But that openness, the official suggested, was not guaranteed forever. Asked what would happen once the initial 60-day period ended, he said it would depend on the negotiations, describing it as one of the issues still to be worked out between the two sides. In other words, the current calm in the strait is real, but it is also conditional, resting on talks that could still succeed or break down in the weeks ahead. The Iranian official then turned to money and to a demand at the heart of the deal. Under the memorandum, he said, Iranian assets frozen by the United States must be released, and Iran must be given full access to the funds held outside the country. He acknowledged that some technical arrangements would have to be handled by Washington and Qatar, since part of those assets are held there, but he was clear that the underlying principle was not up for debate. And on what happens to that money, Iran drew a hard line. The official rejected any claim that another country or entity should have a say in how the assets are used, insisting that Iran alone decides what to do with its own funds. It was a statement of sovereignty as much as finance, a message that even within a deal brokered by others, Tehran intends to guard its independence. For a country that has spent years framing this confrontation as a test of exactly that, it was a fitting note to end on.